internal memory card.
All right. You have so much more of a bigger chest than I do. Hello, guys. So today I have here joined Miguel Gonzalez, now MS3, dude. Like, I cannot believe it's 2 years later we're doing it. Today, guys, we're gonna go ahead and bring to you the do's and don'ts of step 1, the do's and the don'ts. Okay. So, all right, Miguel, so I want to go ahead and lay down these questions for you as you talk about to these guys. So to begin off, let's just tell us a little about you. Why did you come into medical school? What your specialty of choice is, and why are you here helping us today?
I was born in Granada Hills, California, which is this Orange County area. I grew up mostly in Vegas, where I did my degree at UNLV. Heavily into music, played clarinet, saxophone, and drummed. I also had a job that I did on the Strip where I drummed in world famous nightclubs with various artists. Best job a college student could ever have. Always knew I wanted to be a doctor. Applied to medical school and wound up at UNR, where I'm hoping that I'll be an orthopedic surgeon in 2 years. And I mean, the reason why I'm doing this, I've always been into teaching and mentorship, and this is just another way that I can give back as much as possible.
Hopefully with your permission after this, you guys can absolutely hit him up. Matter of fact, I'm going to attach a Reddit link that he made. I'll go ahead and attach a link to that so you guys can have access to his resources. I will say absolutely by and far from my end, I would check out those resources as soon as possible, as soon as you can get your hands on those. Once again, that link will be in the attachment. That link will be in the description below. There we go.
I think the thing that made me the most successful during first year is that I was flexible with what I wanted out of my life. I didn't make med school my sole 100% focus. I thought it was very important to, get to know people, go out and do things that, like my hobby still. I kept teaching music at a local high school. I kept practicing at home. I was playing video games. Just that aspect of life, keeping that a part of my first year of my medical education, I think is what made me so successful, what made me so happy with medical school. And it's kind of crazy that I say that now, because before med school, I never thought a life like that was anywhere near possible. You always hear the horror stories of oh, good luck in med school, you're never gonna sleep, you're not gonna have a social life, you'll never get to do anything. And I just found completely that wasn't the case. And once I figured out that was the case, I kind of made a promise to myself that I was gonna still be a human being and enjoy my life. The thing is you spend this much time doing extracurriculars and this much time studying in undergrad. When you go to med school, it kind of switches. You spend a lot more time studying and less time with extracurriculars. So I just found that I had a lot more free time to kind of just, live the life that I wanted to have.
Can you talk about your first year? How did you feel from the first year, and kind of just what made you overall successful from your first year, and how did that thankfully carry forward into your second year?
I kind of approached it because like I said, you hear the stories that med school's awful, time-wise. So I kind of hit it super hard head on, and I kind of wanted to see, okay, if I put in more effort than I feel I ever have in my life, what does that get me? And then I'll pull back and figure out is it really necessary to spend those extra 5 hours studying on Friday night, or is it better for me to go do something? So I kept looking for that through that first semester. So we have this thing called MedFit, which I'm sure Brian has talked to you about. And a lot of people don't study for it, some people do. I was someone who studied a bit for it because I was okay, well, this is a practice test. I want to see, is this study method gonna work? And I used flashcards. So I made flashcards, went over them a couple times using spaced repetition. Took the test, it went really well. And I'm okay, I think this is gonna work. So I carried the same thing through the first block, spaced repetition. So essentially Monday through Friday, I would make the flashcards for all the lectures. And then Saturday and Sunday, I would review that week twice. So once on Saturday, once on Sunday. Then repeat the next week. Monday through Friday, make new flashcards, and then Saturday, Sunday, do the new flashcards twice. But I would repeat the flashcards from the week before once. And then it was the same thing the next week. 2 days of new flashcards, and then on Saturday I do the first week of flashcards. Sunday I would do the second week of flashcards. So it was spaced repetition and layering, and that was just what I found worked really well for me, and I just kind of got lucky that was what I tried, and that was what worked. It was a proven method that I put together based off of other people's research, and it worked. And since it did work, I just kept doing that throughout the entirety of first year.
You're gonna hear about, I forget what they call this, high yield, or not high yield, but as far as like high recall goes, and if you want to be able to remember things a lot more rapidly, effectively and stuff, you want to use practice questions and flashcards. And that was one of the things that first aid actually talked about. So if you want to talk about a textbook student that applied that straight from the get-go and not just for step one, Miguel here is actually the perfect example of that. And I really think his grades were really able to reflect, like you did fantastic, I believe, during the first year, second year, still one of the top students. And the great thing is he was still able to enjoy his social life, and all these other things that I continue to harp on are super, super important. Okay, so next question. We kind of talked about, you know, our journey and progression throughout the first year and the second year. I think one of the things I really appreciate about Miguel, he was a buddy that I thankfully had as a roommate, that I could talk about all of these successes, hardships, and all these things we were going through the first year. And I think we can both agree that can definitely have an effect on how you're going to process medical school. And one of the big things that comes up through the first years is step one exam. So now that you kind of talked about the fact that you had all those extracurriculars, kind of modifying how exactly medical school is going to run, what was your plan of attack for the very first semester of your second year?
So over summer, I kind of overplanned for myself, thinking I was going to do all these things, and then some things kind of fell short back in Vegas for some shadowing opportunities, which is fine. So I did what any normal sane person would do, and I played a bunch of video games. But no, I told myself I was gonna start flashcarding for second year for STEP, because now there was gonna be a focus on, you know, step one material rather than just school given curriculum. Originally, I had the crazy goal of I was gonna flashcard all of fulfillment and all of first aid, and I realized that was insane. That was never gonna happen. If I didn't play as many video games, I probably would have gotten pretty close, but it was fine. I had a good summer. But I did get all of fulfillment flashcarded over summer. And I had started first aid towards the end, going into the beginning of second year. And then my approach to the first semester of second year was pretty much like the same thing as first year, spaced repetition, trying to get through all the flashcards at least 3 times. I would start with just that. And then once I was done with that, I would watch the corresponding fulfillment video, just the video on 2 times speed, didn't take notes. And then after that, I would answer all the questions for Kaplan that were on that subject, and then review the questions, obviously, and then take the test. And that was just like rinse and repeat for every single exam. Learn the flashcards 2 or 3 times, watch the fulfillment video, answer questions. Didn't ever go back looking at old stuff, so whatever I learned in block 6, I wasn't reviewing while I was in block 8 before winter break. I just focused on learning whatever I was doing at the time really, really well. I didn't feel the need to go back, because I have a pretty good understanding that unless you're using this material all the time, you're going to forget it. It doesn't matter how good your memory is. Like, I would consider myself someone who does have a pretty good memory, and unless I'm using something, I'm going to forget it. There's just no way to remember it all unless you have a photographic memory. And in my mind, I understood that. To me, it wasn't worth it to spend the time like, oh, I'll spend a couple hours reviewing block 6 stuff. But I'm just gonna have to keep doing that over and over and over again. So why not just focus on building a really strong foundation, so come dedicated time, that foundation is there and you can just remind yourself of everything really quickly. And so to me, time-wise, that made way more sense.
And I'm gonna add on to that actually, because I think one of the things I came to terms with was the fact that throughout the year, I'd study for the exam that we had, and like we're talking about regular exams for every single block. So our first block, as a matter of fact, was immunology, genetics, and microbiology. I would say I did fairly well in that block because that was some stuff that I did in undergrad. But the thing I did not like the most is when it came to dedicated, I felt like I really had to take time to go ahead and relearn the material all over again, rather than exactly what he's talking about, was having that strong foundation beforehand that he built, and everybody else who does get unstuck, that they had throughout the entire year. Like, they took the time, you took the blood, you took the sweat and the tears to go ahead and make sure that you learned it well the first time, so that when it came back to dedicated, you could easily recall the stuff. You didn't have to struggle, and that for whatever 8 or 4 weeks you had, it was able to come back to you just like that. Rather than somebody on my side who waited basically until kind of the last second to do exam studying and stuff. They didn't get a complete enough questions, didn't do enough flashcards or whatever the case is. Now I'm here back and like dedicated, having to struggle to kind of relearn all of the stuff rather than it coming back quick. And there's a whole bunch of factors that played into that. You know, I was on the dance team, was probably playing a little bit more video games than I probably should have. My sleep schedule wasn't necessarily optimal to what I wanted it to be. Miguel, I felt like could sleep up for like 5 or 6 hours and be perfectly fine. Just wasn't the case for me though, but if there's those modifications that I definitely would have made was making sure that I built that strong foundation at the very beginning, studying every single week right from the get-go as soon as the block starts to make sure that your future dividends, like the dividends pay off in the future, and as you guys can see, it did.
Building that foundation doesn't require, and I've kind of already touched on it, but it doesn't require like waking up in the morning, going to lectures 8 to 5, and then studying until you can't anymore. Like that's just not the case. As long as you do a little bit every single day and you don't put anything off, like that's where that foundation comes from. Doing something all the time, right? Always doing a little bit here and there. I mean, because there's definitely days where I'm like, I just don't feel like studying today, and I didn't.
And we went out.
And we went out, you know? Like I said, I'm not someone who typically says no to doing stuff with people because I feel like those memories, it's so important. It's so important for your mental health on top of that. You know, if you isolate yourself, and that's how burnout happens. You're like, I'm studying all the time, but wait, I can't go out because I'm studying all the time. And then you're working at like half capacity because you're so out of it from doing nothing but studying that any time you spent in that mindset studying, it's not effective learning. You know, if you're keeping your mind clear and you're happy, you know, that's going to affect your learning in a very, very positive way.
What I did, this is the don'ts. Don't delay doing these flashcards and all of these other resources that are possibly out there for you. And I think one of the biggest regrets I definitely had was the fact that he actually made these pharmacy flashcards. I don't remember if you had them done specifically within the first semester, but
I had probably half done. I was completely done by the time winter break hit.
So like that's, as you can see, he did something like that. I just really never thought of wanting to do that. I was trying to get too comfortable with the fact that I needed to read first aid over and over again in order to get like a basis of information. And then plus there was also some other resources out there. There was like Duke Deck, Boards and Beyond, and all these other things. But I really wish I would have counted more time to utilizing resources that were already out there. So there was a Duke Deck. As I was saying before, he flashcarded a lot of the pharmacology, which could have easily taken off so much. And I cannot account this, guys. So much stress out of the dedicated period, which we'll talk about later in this video. That was a don'ts. Don't spend too much time playing video games and sleeping too much. He probably knows my sleep struggle as I was going through that period during the first semester, but try to go through it as hard as possible. I know there's going to be times where you don't want to do it, but Miguel, I believe, definitely did it right by doing a lot of those flashcards and still keeping up with like those Kaplan question banks that the school gave us too. Like I wish I would have done definitely way more of that. So now if we talk about the second semester, and this is definitely, you know, where I remember you and me in my vlog that hasn't been posted yet, is the fact that in January and February we kept talking about the fact like, holy crap, man, this is like, we're at third base right now. We're about to hit home with this thing, this big exam that's coming up. Yeah. We had one agreement, was the fact that like, this is it, this is real now. This huge exam that could really determine our career paths is right ahead of us. What exactly, how did you feel? Like, how did you, once again, you know, plan for that second semester? Were there any unexpected hiccups that may have arose during that second semester? Just kind of like, feel free to talk about that.
So, like I said, during the first semester, I was very like, whatever I'm studying for that block, that's what I'm studying. I wasn't even thinking about anything else. Once I finished flashcard and everything and winter break was done and came to second semester, my mindset definitely changed. Because like you said, it's coming. Now I have to start, like, I have to take this really, really seriously. So the way I decided to start doing that was, as you mentioned, I started going through Boards and Beyond. I told myself, even if I hadn't learned the material yet, I was gonna watch all of Boards and Beyond and answer all the questions by the time my first CBSE came about. So getting through the stuff I had already learned, block 6, 7, 8, so it was like cardio, immuno, MSK, renal, pulm, hemonc, micro. So we had covered that. So pretty much everything. We just hadn't done like endo, GI, repro, neuro, and psych yet. It didn't matter. To me, I went through all the stuff we had already learned, 2 times speed, no notes, and answered the questions immediately after. When I got to the stuff I hadn't learned yet, same thing. 2 times speed, no notes, answer the questions. And I got through all of that before the CBSE. But while still like doing my same schedule for the other blocks for a class exam. So I think at that time we were studying for endo, but same thing, I was still doing like flashcards, Pathoma, Kaplan in that order. But now I'm adding on, with the extra time I had, the Boards and Beyond stuff. After the CBSE, which went well, I added on one more thing to my schedule. So I was done boards and beyond at that point. Still doing class exam focused study schedule, flashcards, Pathoma, Kaplan. But now I started doing a full review of the Pathoma videos and then my farm decks that I made from first aid. Each of those would usually only take like an hour each, sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more, but usually no more than 2.5 hours to finish both of those. And I did those every day on like a 3 or 4 week rotation. And between like the first week of February and the start of Dedicated, I had gotten through those twice while still studying exam specific material. But that was like the only like full-time review I did. And it was just because I felt like Pathoma gave me a good scaffold to build off of. And that was like, that scaffold is what I wanted to remember continuously. The farm is very detail heavy. Unless you're constantly doing it, you are going to forget it, which is why I was doing farm. But I wasn't reviewing anything else. All the rest of my time was spent on studying for the class-specific exams. I took UWorld 1 in the middle of February. That went pretty well too. A little better than the CBSE. Right before we took our second CBSE, I took an MBME, which didn't go that great, but it was whatever, you know. Like,
that was one of the hard ones though.
Yeah, it was a harder one. I probably didn't take it in the best mindset. Definitely make a lot of careless mistakes. One thing that I know I'm really weak on is if I don't feel like a test that I'm working on is important, I'll just blow through it and not even think twice. Like, I do that a lot in class exams because, like, to me, if I get 2 more questions right, but I spent another hour in the exam room to get those 2 questions right, that is not worth, you know, the extra stress, the extra headache, the time, you know. And that was like my mindset on a lot of practice exams too, until I got to like the last 2 or 3 in Dedicated, when I was like, okay, I really need to like sit down and focus on these now. And then of course in STEP I took the same mindset. But I'm good at flipping that switch though. I know not everybody is, but I knew it was within my comfort zone to do that, so.
Now let's go back to don'ts once again. So,
say donuts?
Don'ts. Don't eat donuts though. That's probably not the greatest thing to do. For me, it was definitely a matter of like starting off the second semester, winter break. I remember I took a bunch of time to go ahead and study biochemistry, which is one of the big recommendations that a lot of people say to do. It was one of the things that our school recommended. As far as don'ts goes, so this was the semester that actually I started to kind of retract from a lot of extracurricular stuff. So the dance team was at the beginning of the semester for me, and that was something that definitely took way more time than I thought it was going to. But I mean, I had a good time. The second semester after January 26th is when I got done with my dance performance, so I feel like I could dedicate a little bit more time. Once again, the drawback was during the first semester, I didn't have a strong foundation for a lot of stuff. So what did that cause me to do? I started reviewing back towards cardiovascular and all these things that I didn't have a strong foundation on, which it took away time from doing all of the stuff that was in front of me right there and then, which is exactly what he was talking about, which is to say now it's taking time away from building a strong foundation on GI, on endocrine, on repro, which I did not do great on. Take that, like, once again, exactly what he's talking about. I made that mistake, so you guys can kind of see the correlation there, that's something to take very, very seriously if you want to make sure you're doing great on the STEP exam. Other thing as well is that the fact that I still had a little bit more stuff going on, so then ACTS training started to take a lot of my time, and that was kind of like my baby. I don't think that was the greatest detriment. It was still okay to do that kind of stuff, because as a matter of fact, Miguel was actually doing something on the side with band, which is something he was super passionate about. I think that definitely gave you some revitalization. I think that's something we both did very well. I think I overdid it, probably too much though. And then as far as, you know, drawbacks, like I said, once again, is as far as reassessing where I was, I definitely needed to know I needed to do more flashcards. I needed to do way more question banks, which I feel like did happen, but it was kind of already too late with the expected target score that I wanted to get. You can still kind of make it happen. It's just a matter of, are you gonna kind of dedicate enough time and stick on the correct study plan to go ahead and take care of that stuff. But I still don't think I was doing enough flashcards or practice questions necessarily as much as I did. And I do believe that it's because of the fact that I was taking too much time reviewing back on other stuff rather than focusing on what's in front of me. So it was just a very huge time kill for me, and I wish I could have taken that back. I really do.
Yeah, I think that's like an excellent point, and like expands on what I was talking about, because it's way better like if you fall behind in, you know, let's say block 6 material, and then you start, I'm going to keep working on block 6 material in block 7 while I'm trying to learn block 7, but now you're behind in block 7 too, and it's, you know, like it keeps building and building and building. It would be much better to say, okay, I know block 6 I suck at, I know that's going to be a focus point for me when I get to dedicated, but I'm just going to keep working on block 7 as much as I can, because then you can fix it from that point. All right, I'm going to learn block 7 really well, block 8 really well, block 9 really well, block 10 really well. I know I suck in block 6, so I'm going to have to spend probably like a week or two just reviewing block 6 and relearning it. That would be, in my opinion, the better approach than continuously putting yourself back. And a lot of people do that. That's like a very, very common thing to feel like, I don't know everything, I can't move on. You know, and you got to be very careful not to get lost in that trap.
Here we go. Okay, this is the big part that I'm sure you guys are going to want to know about. So Miguel, no pressure here.
Still a little negative feelings about, you know, dedicated with COVID and everything.
And you've had a very successful time during dedicated. How do you go ahead and communicate this to these guys in the simplest way possible? What was your plan for dedicated? What resources did you use? What did you have to do mentally, spiritually, like everything you could possibly think of that these guys need to know to prepare successfully?
I'll definitely like talk about it. The link he mentioned before, I like go through a full write-up. So if there's anything I say that you're not sure on, or maybe you know you want elaborated on a little bit, that link will probably cover it. Write me a comment on there, and I reply back to all of them. So basically, my plan during dedicated. So like I mentioned before, during the second semester of second year, I was doing the Pathoma videos and the farm flashcards and repeating that. So I went through them twice. I did the same thing during dedicated. I did it another 2 times. So every day I did 1 chapter Pathoma videos, 1 chapter of farm flashcards from first aid. So that was every single day. The other thing I added now I'm doing UWorld. And now instead of like how I did with Kaplan during the blocks where it was just that section, now I was doing fully randomized from day 1. So I only use UWorld randomized, and I would do 2 UWorld blocks a day. Sometimes I did 3 if I had a little bit of extra time. So pretty much my morning was wake up, do 2 UWorld blocks, review them, take lunch, then do the Pathoma video and then a farm deck, maybe close to dinner at that point. The rest of the day, now I rewatched Boards and Beyond again, but this time I decided to take notes. And my focus on the notes was to write things down that I felt were a struggle for me, or maybe I didn't remember 100% at that point. By the end of dedicated, I had like a packet of like 40, 50 pages that I could just blast through in like 3 days and just immediately, refresh my memory on everything. And then again, spaced repetition, right? So I layered them slowly, and then right before the test, I went over them again more rapidly to keep building. That's basically the general structure. So my original goal date was April 18th. We took our last CBSC for our school, I think like the 27th, I believe it was, in March, something like that. So that would have given me about 4.5-ish, 5 weeks. And I knew between that day and the actual test day that I would have had enough time to go through the Pathoma flashcards close to twice, the UWorld question bank, and then the Boards and Beyond stuff. It would have been really long, hard days, but it would have been possible. But in my mind, I was, again, like, I just want to get this out of the way and move on with my life. So obviously that didn't all happen. I ended up studying for about 3 weeks. I took practice tests and I hit above where my goal score was. And I felt pretty good, but at that point, it was very unsure on whether or not I was actually going to be able to take my test. Found out that I wasn't going to be able to take my test, and I just said, nope, not doing it. And
this guy went through a lot of stuff
as
far as rescheduling goes.
Yeah, I think by the end I had close to 8 days that I was supposed to take the test. So I took 3 weeks off, and I played video games pretty much nonstop during that time.
At the top of the Call of Duty leaderboards.
Yeah, man. So when I finally did get a concrete test day, I purposely made sure that it was 3 weeks. That way I had time to pick up where I left off and like rush through everything really, really quickly to kind of get my mindset back to where I was before my 3-week hiatus. Still the same mindset same schedule of UWorld in the morning, then Pathoma and flashcards, or farm flashcards, and then the evening Boards and Beyond. Once I finally finished all that, now I started going through the Boards and Beyond notes. So I would do like 1 section an evening or 2 sections an evening after getting done, UWorld. Once I finished UWorld, I started reviewing UWorld. And that's so every day, every week, my layering kind of changed on what I was working on, depending on if I had finished something. But I ended up taking 2 practice tests last week. So I had NBME 18, which everybody says is really good. I did that one first. Didn't do as well. I did good on it, don't get me wrong, but I didn't do as well as I was hoping to. But at that point, I understood that, and I'm like, okay, it's good at cutting it a little close. You probably should, you know, try a little bit more. So when I took the second U World, I hit well above my goal score. I also did the free 120 after the day after the U World test that I did really well on that. I made an equation sheet, and I reviewed that one time a day, starting 3 days before the test. Rapid fired through the Boards and Beyond notes and the anatomy concepts thing. There's this file going on the internet that you can find pretty easily. It's like Anatomy 100 Concepts. I went through that. But yeah, I didn't take the day off before the test. I didn't feel that it was really necessary. I think I got done about 8 p.m., maybe 9 p.m. I was nervous but confident. Like, I felt confident in my abilities. I felt confident in the knowledge base that I had. I've never been a super anxious test taker. I don't know, the way I always think about it, and I tell this to people too with even class exams, when you walk into a testing room, there's nothing you can do anymore to make it better. But what you can do is make it worse.
Yeah, we did talk about
this. And what I mean by that is, if you go into a test and you're really anxious, you're practically thinking, oh, I wish I would have done this better. I wish I would have done that. Oh, I wish I would have looked at that more. I wish I would have woken up and read this. That is going to just mess up the chemistry in your head, and you're going to just be really foggy brained and not be able to think as clearly as you probably would have. And you are going to miss questions you normally wouldn't have if you go in with that mindset. You will make the outcome of the test worse than it would have if you just went in with the mindset that I did what I could, and now I just have to show what I did. To try to have that mindset, and this goes in with ACT, you talk about all the time. I feel like, I don't practice ACT, but I feel like there's a lot of things that ACT stands for that I do practice in my own life, just not in the exact same way they do it. And I think that's one of them, is just understanding that what's happening in that moment, it's going to happen. You're going to take that test with whatever knowledge base you have walking in. If you forget that and you start thinking about the negative, what you could have done better, it gets in the way of that, and it's really blocking pieces of information you would have normally had in your head. Woke up in the morning, felt pretty good, went into the testing center, starting to get a little more nervous, but again, still remaining confident. That kind of all changed once the test started. I got through the first block. I couldn't believe how difficult it was. By the time I walked out, I remember getting out of there and getting home and just laying in bed.
I remember him coming home and be like, holy shit, that was hard.
But yeah, and I just kind of forgot about it after that. So usually it takes 3 weeks to get your step score back. And that's what I thought, it was gonna stay that way. I guess it changed because of COVID. One of our friends messaged me. He's like, "Hey, you ready to see your score tomorrow?" I'm like, "Excuse me, what?" I opened it and I literally couldn't believe, the score that had, come out of all that. It was where I thought I was going to be, around it at least. But compared to how I felt, there's just no way. That was my dedicated.
Alrighty. Don't. So I forgot to mention this for the second semester too, but during the dedicated period, I think I keep harping on this over and over again, was the fact that all of that wasted time bleeding that we talked about at the beginning of this video, of me trying to catch up with other stuff because of the wrong way I was studying, really just created this very, very bad snowball effect, to the point where even if I was doing something right during dedicated, which is creating that scheduled plan, doing a lot more practice questions, doing more flashcards for pathoma, for first aid, for pharmacology, I still had that backpack of burden on my back from all of the previous blocks and stuff, and it was just something very, very hard to shake off. And it sucked because here I am now within March, which is our dedicated period, of me having to catch up with all of this stuff that I didn't take care of when I had the chance to do it. So if there's one thing I can very, very much harp on over and over again, guys, please, 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 listen to Miguel's advice and don't make the same mistakes I did. It was honestly a really sad story as far as my dedicated goes, but I think that's why we're here, and this is why I'm really thankful that Miguel is here. I'm super blessed to have him as a roommate to go ahead and talk about this thing, because this is something super passionate for me, to make sure you guys don't have the same experience I did, and I want you guys to have an experience like Miguel did. My dedicated period was about 8 or 10 weeks long, and of course mine kind of got pushed back by COVID as well. And it was basically the same thing he did. I essentially copied and pasted what he did, but like I said, again, I had the burden of all that stuff on my back to go ahead and catch up on. The Duke deck, which was my main resource for trying to build the fundamentals of everything, I kind of went off of that and just kind of did flashcards from a specific time. And it was working pretty well, but then towards the end, I started to realize more and more that I'm like, holy shit, I really don't have a strong basis for all this stuff, and it's taking me longer than I expected to do stuff because either the resources didn't have everything I needed to, so I needed to put more into it, or I wasn't doing those flashcards that Miguel made for both of us early enough, and it's just one thing after another started piling on top of each other, and my one thought every single day was, why did I not take care of this during the first semester? My biggest regret by far. I'm not gonna lie, me and Miguel have great memories from like the entire second year, but I wish I would have, definitely taken care of my sleep, less video games throughout the first semester, so I didn't have this thought on my mind. The week leading up to it, I got a huge anxiety attack, which is very, very impressive considering the fact that Miguel knows me. I'm like probably one of the chillest dudes you can possibly think of. I'm like the act facilitator. But I think it just shows merit to how much this exam can really mess with you because of like how big it is in determining your career. And you don't really feel the fullness of how much weight that exam carries until you go through second year itself. Like you really think about it, it's a dedication. You've dedicated 2 years of your life towards this huge exam. There's people out there who know that same gut-wrenching feeling that really attacks your heart and does not feel good. I had that during the last week. And it was kind of crazy because I just remember my roommate and Miguel as well just like partying and stuff, and I'm just like, why can't I be doing this right now? A lot of my practice scores weren't good at the beginning as I was taking them, and I did all of the necessary question banks that you guys are gonna get recommended to do, all of the MBMEs, both of the U Worlds. I also did the free 120. I did that, and those NBMEs definitely didn't correlate exactly with what I did get, except for the NBME 18, which I didn't believe it was gonna match up with what my actual score was. Based upon the stuff, because I like Miguel's gut feeling. He always told me like, yeah, you're definitely sitting like a 230, 235, and me and him will talk about my knowledge base all the time, and I think I was in like 235-ish range, sometimes 240 on a good day. And night before, 3 days leading up to it, thankfully he drove down to Vegas and he drove the entire way. As I looked at my first aid book, and I was super thankful for that. Hang out with the family you're going to hear over and over again to go ahead and take care of yourself, which is definitely a do on my part. And I'm glad that, I meditated the night before, gave my thanks, and gave all the thanks and support that a lot of people gave me my way, and I just felt super good before it. And this is the bad part. What Miguel was talking about when he was saying that sometimes you can go into that exam and you can feel like complete shit and then come out with a good score. I unfortunately was on the opposite end of that spectrum where I came out feeling great and I did not get the score that I wanted to. So there's a lot of variables that goes into this exam, guys, but all I can say at the end of the day is that it's very variable with what you can get. It's a scary test, but at the end of the day, just do kind of what Miguel does and don't do what I do. Or what I did, I guess you could say, some of the stuff at least, to make sure you avoid that. And take care of yourself. Definitely the day before, that was one of the hugest benefits. I came in there with a clear mind and I felt like I crushed the test, but that just didn't happen, unfortunately. I wish I could look back at the test and figure out what the heck went wrong, because I really just don't know to this day. I don't know. Same exact feelings he had. Like I opened up my test and it was just a scary moment, and I was just crushed that entire day. And then the next week my dog dies, and it was a terrible time. But don't mess up the first semester. If there's a thing you gotta do, you gotta be forward looking the entire time. It's okay to take care of yourself. That's definitely me. We did something together, make some good memories in medical school, but make sure you maintain that discipline of sticking to the study plan that he kind of recommended. Like I said, check out the Reddit link that he has to make sure you're continuously doing that and avoid a lot of the common mistakes that I unfortunately made.
Yeah, I would say if I had to give like the top 3 mistakes I think people make, it's 1, trying to cram for section exams. 2, don't get lost in rabbit holes like on the details. 3 would be, I just had this in my head. Oh, got it. And the 3rd thing would be pick your resources and stick to them. It's a lot better to know 2, 3, 4 resources really well than to try to spread yourself out over 8 resources.
Okay, so I really want to ask you this question. Oh God, the battery's dying. Damn it. All right, this is a good question I wanted to ask you. What do you believe is your strongest quality that allows you to persevere throughout the entire year? This could be time management, planning, humor, I don't know.
I always am okay with taking a step away from work. I don't believe that in order to do well, you need to be killing yourself 100% of the time. And that kind of ties in a little bit with time management and organization. Understanding like, I have this to get done today. I have 7 hours after school to get it done. if I want to go out to dinner with some of my friends, I have this much time to get what I want done, you know? So, but yeah, that's what I would say it is.
If you had to give the most inspirational / groundbreaking secret spice of a mindset for others to incorporate, what would it be? Juicy.
Be okay with not knowing everything all the time. You'll just be happier with that. It's okay if someone next to you can answer a question and you can't. Like, that's gonna be the case your entire life, so just get comfortable with that feeling.
Alrighty. And last question, totally related to this. What does love mean to you, Miguel?
So weird.
We have an audience in the back now, guys, so no pressure, Miguel.
I hate this. This is that's a hard question to think about. I would say love is like when you have someone that you can count on all the time. You know, someone who's there for you, even when you might be the one who's wrong. You have things. Everybody has flaws. Someone who's okay with those flaws and still sees you as a good person in spite of them. I feel like love doesn't come from words. It's more about like actions and expression. Like, it doesn't need to be said.
Well, guys, you heard it from Miguel. Just want to say thank you to Miguel for taking the time to go ahead and like basically take his time out of rotations that we're actually in right now.
I'm super busy with psych, so it's really hard for me to do this.
Dang, he's making fun of me, man. We're really serious about this for you guys. This is something that's very meaningful to us to go ahead and help you guys out with your step one journey. Once again, if you guys have any questions, any comments or concerns that you'd like to go ahead and shoot my way, as well as Miguel's way, please feel free to go ahead and do that to make sure you guys have a successful step towards step, pun intended. You want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, just remember if you want to take a look at my study plan again and what I did and look at my Anki and Quizlet decks, just go ahead and hit that link on Reddit that Brian's going to put in the description.
Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you guys go ahead and kill step. Should we like film the audience?